It was a quiet morning on Earth, the kind where everything seemed calm. The world was busy with its usual hum, people going to work, birds chirping in the sky, and the everyday routine of life unfolding. But somewhere deep in the heart of a top-secret military base, a small group of scientists and military leaders were glued to their screens, looking at something they had never seen before. A strange signal had been detected, an anomaly in space that was unlike anything Earth had encountered. It wasn't a satellite, it wasn't a comet, and it wasn't any spacecraft known to humanity. The signal came from deep in the farthest reaches of space. The signal was strong, persistent, and growing stronger by the minute. It was coming from something massive, something powerful. At first, no one knew what to think. Some of the scientists suggested that it could be an unknown natural phenomenon. But deep down, they all knew something was different. Something didn't feel right. The data was clear. This was an artificial object. It wasn't just a signal. It was a message. As the hours passed, the signal became clearer, and the object's size started to take shape. It was big, bigger than any human-made spacecraft, bigger than any space station. No one had seen anything like it, and the feeling of uncertainty began to spread throughout the room. General Lucas was the first to voice his concern. This could be a weapon, or worse, a fleet of weapons. What are we dealing with here? He stood up, his voice calm but filled with concern. He had been in the military long enough to know when things felt wrong. The scientists exchanged nervous glances. They were experts in their fields, but they weren't prepared for this. The object was not just a ship. It was something ancient, something powerful. Its metallic surface shimmered with unknown technology that no human had ever seen, and it was heading straight for Earth. The Warship, as they later called it, had been drifting through space for thousands of years, waiting, hidden from the universe. But now it was revealed, and it was coming closer. It wasn't just any ship, it was humanity's warship, a creation from Earth's past, built before humanity even knew what it was capable of. Scientists pored over the data, trying to learn everything they could about the object. They discovered that the ship's design was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was too advanced for the time it was created in. It seemed to be waiting for something, as if it had been dormant for centuries, waiting for Earth to become strong enough to be ready. The warship is human-made, one of the lead scientists, Dr. Evelyn Mitchell, said, her voice a mix of shock and disbelief. But how? We don't have technology like this. Her hands trembled as she looked at the data. The ship wasn't just old, it was ancient. And yet its technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever created. The room went silent. They had just discovered something that could change the course of history. But why was it here? Why now? General Lucas paced back and forth, thinking. Could it be a weapon? A weapon built by humans long ago, but abandoned and lost in space. He shook his head. No, it can't be. It's too advanced. There's something more to this. The next few hours were filled with frantic analysis. The warship's energy levels were unlike anything they had seen before. It was generating power at a level that no one on Earth could match. But there was no immediate danger, yet. The warship wasn't firing weapons. It wasn't attacking. It was just waiting. Then, something unexpected happened. The warship sent a message. It wasn't a voice, but a signal, a transmission. It wasn't in any known language. The scientists tried to decode it, but it was unlike anything they had encountered. It was a mix of symbols, code, and strange energy pulses. And then, just as everyone thought they were getting close to understanding the message, a voice echoed through the command center. It wasn't from a person. It was from the ship itself, transmitted through the signal. Prepare for war. The words hung in the air like a shadow, casting a chill over everyone in the room. The room was still for a moment. Everyone was in shock. Who was this message for? Was this ship a part of some ancient human civilization, or was it something more sinister? What did it mean? Why had the ship revealed itself now, after so many years? The room erupted into chaos. Military leaders shouted orders. Scientists scrambled to decipher the meaning of the message. The world was on edge. Earth had just discovered its warship, a weapon from the past, and it was calling for war. But against whom? As General Lucas stood in the middle of the command center, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. He looked out at the screen, where the image of the warship loomed, massive and powerful, like an ancient beast awakening from a long slumber. It was clear now. Humanity had just entered a new chapter in its history, and the question was no longer if war would come, but when. The warship had been revealed, and humanity had to be ready for the battle of its life. But who would they fight? And more importantly, who had built the warship in the first place? The mystery was just beginning, and there was no turning back now. The warship had spoken. It was time to prepare for war. The first few hours after the warship's discovery were a whirlwind of chaos. The entire world was on edge, waiting for answers and hoping for a sign of what was to come. The scientists had scrambled to decode the message, but the signals were too complex, too advanced. Humanity was up against a puzzle it didn't have the pieces for. The warship, now clearly identified as of human origin, loomed in space like a massive, silent titan. Despite the growing panic, there was one question on everyone's mind. Why now? General Lucas knew something that the rest of the world didn't. Long before the warship had appeared, Earth's governments had been aware of an ancient program, one shrouded in secrecy, known only to the highest military officials. The program's details were hidden, buried deep in classified files, but Lucas had been involved in it when he was younger. And now, it seemed, the time had come for the truth to be revealed. With the message from the warship still fresh in his mind. Prepare for war. Lucas called for an emergency meeting with the top military minds and the lead scientists. Dr. Evelyn Mitchell, who had worked tirelessly trying to decipher the warship's technology, was among them. We need to understand what we're dealing with, Dr. Mitchell said, her voice calm but filled with an undercurrent of urgency. This warship, it isn't just some leftover relic. This was made with technology far beyond our own. Lucas nodded gravely. The technology isn't just advanced, it's ancient. This ship wasn't built recently. It was built long before our time. Whoever built this warship, they knew something we didn't. The room grew silent. The implications were terrifying. They were dealing with a piece of human history that had been forgotten, a chapter buried so deep that no one had thought to look for it. And now, this ship, with all its weaponry, was waiting in orbit, sending cryptic messages to Earth. But why? What had happened to the creators of this warship, and why had they chosen this moment to return? Dr. Mitchell stood up, brushing her hair back, her eyes still glued to the data. There's something we missed. We know the ship is human-made, but its design doesn't match anything from our current era. The materials, the energy systems, it's not just futuristic. It's almost alien. A cold chill ran through the room. The word alien carried with it a sense of dread. Were they about to face an enemy from the stars, one that had once shared Earth's history, but had long since vanished? Lucas took a deep breath, trying to process the flood of information. It's clear that whoever created this warship did so with a purpose. It was meant for war. But who were they fighting? He muttered more to himself than anyone else. One of the senior officers, Colonel Edwards, spoke up. Could this have been a weapon built by an ancient civilization? One that we don't even know about? Possibly, Dr. Mitchell replied, tapping away at her tablet. But the more I look at the data, the more I think this isn't just about a weapon. This ship is alive in some ways. The systems inside seem to respond like it's sentient, as if it's waiting for something. Waiting for what? Lucas asked, his brow furrowing. That's what we need to figure out, Dr. Mitchell said. This ship wasn't built just to fight. There's something else at play here. The meeting dragged on, And while they were no closer to understanding the full purpose of the warship, a plan was forming. They needed to get inside the ship, access its core, and understand how to control it, or at the very least, figure out how to prevent it from being used against Earth. As the days passed, the world began to realize that the warship's appearance wasn't a random event. It had been waiting for centuries, silent, hidden, and now awake. It was no accident that it revealed itself when Earth had finally reached a level of technological advancement to even begin to comprehend its power. General Lucas knew this warship wasn't just an artifact. It was a key to something much larger, something humanity had yet to understand. And perhaps it was humanity's greatest weapon, or its biggest mistake. The government began organizing a task force to board the warship, to make first contact, and to figure out how it could be used. It was a daunting task. None of them knew how to approach the situation. They were stepping into the unknown, with no roadmap and no clear idea of the consequences. But one thing was certain. They had no choice. The warship had given its warning. And now, the countdown was on. Humanity had to prepare for war. But against whom? Lucas couldn't help but wonder if the ship's message wasn't just a warning. Was it a challenge? A test to see if humanity was worthy of controlling such power? Or was it a call to arms, beckoning Earth into a conflict the likes of which they had never known? The answers were out there, drifting in the cold expanse of space, and the only way to uncover them was to face the warship head-on. It was no longer just about understanding the ship's technology. It was about understanding the history behind it, and the enemies that had once faced it. And as Earth's leaders made their plans, one thing became undeniable. This warship was not just a relic of the past, it was a harbinger of what was to come. The war had already begun. The world had been thrown into disarray. Governments scrambled to respond to the unexpected arrival of the warship in Earth's orbit. News outlets covered every possible angle, and across the globe, people found themselves glued to their screens, watching with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and confusion. Humanity had always looked to the stars, dreaming of what lay beyond, but never had those dreams been accompanied by such an ominous reality. Inside the top-secret military base, the pressure was mounting. General Lucas and Dr. Mitchell, alongside the world's best scientists and engineers, were preparing for what seemed like an impossible mission. Boarding the warship, the task was beyond comprehension. Not only did they need to figure out how to access it, but they also needed to understand its purpose. The stakes were high, and every decision made from this point forward would shape the fate of humanity. "I don't like this," Colonel Edwards muttered, his eyes never leaving the screen in front of him. The warship's silhouette still loomed in space, an intimidating presence in the sky. "It doesn't feel like a coincidence. It's like the ship's been waiting for us. For something specific." "I agree," Lucas replied, his voice firm but weary. "This isn't just a random occurrence. The warship isn't here because of some mistake. It's here because it was meant to be here." But as the days passed and the plans to board the ship came into focus, the situation grew more complicated. The warship hadn't just been dormant for centuries. The ship had been observing, watching humanity grow. And now that it had made its presence known, it wasn't clear whether it was friend or foe. Its actions seemed to defy any known logic, shifting between dormant and active, as if waiting for something to trigger it. One morning, as the team gathered in the command room, Dr. Mitchell finally managed to break through some of the code embedded within the warship's transmission. The message was still cryptic, but the tone had changed. It was no longer a command but a warning. "Prepare. The reckoning is near. The battle for dominance has begun. Choose your side." Dr. Mitchell turned away from her screen, her face pale. It's almost like the warship is talking to us, but not in a language we can understand yet." "What do you mean?" Lucas asked, his brow furrowing as he stepped toward her. "The ship's transmission. It's almost like a signal, like it's calling out to something, or someone." "In space," Dr. Mitchell explained, her hands trembling as she adjusted the settings on the screen. It's as though the warship is challenging us, pushing humanity to make a choice. But what choice? We didn't ask for this, Edwards responded sharply, standing behind them. I don't think the warship is asking us for anything, Dr. Mitchell countered. It's declaring something. It's like it's been preparing for a battle, and we're the next players in the game. We're being drawn into something larger than ourselves. Lucas shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. So this ship isn't just a weapon. It's a beacon, or a warning. Dr. Mitchell nodded slowly. Yes, it's a beacon for something bigger. And I think it's preparing us for a war, but not with anyone we know. It's been waiting. For someone. The room grew cold, the weight of her words sinking in. The situation had changed. This wasn't just about Earth dealing with an ancient warship from its past. It was about what the warship was preparing humanity for. A war, not just with the unknown, but perhaps with enemies they could never have imagined. At that moment, the transmission cut off. The ship, which had been broadcasting its eerie messages, suddenly went silent. The scientists and engineers scrambled to adjust their equipment, trying to reconnect, but the warship's signal had disappeared, leaving only silence in its wake. The stillness was terrifying. For the first time since its appearance, the warship was no longer sending any messages, and that, in itself, felt like a warning. Something was coming. Lucas knew they had no time to waste. The plan to board the ship and make first contact with it was in motion, but the uncertainty about what would happen once they made contact weighed heavily on him. No one truly knew what lay inside the warship, but the urgency in the air was palpable. The military had begun assembling a team of specialists, a mix of engineers, soldiers, and scientists who would attempt to board the warship and make sense of its purpose. They were all trained for situations that involved uncertainty and danger, but no one had ever faced a challenge like this. As the hours ticked by, the fear in the air shifted to anticipation. They were about to embark on a journey into the unknown. For many, it was a mission of discovery. For others, it was a mission of survival. On the day the mission was set to begin, General Lucas stood before the team, his face grim but determined. "Listen up," he said, addressing the group of specialists who had been assembled. "We don't know what we're going to find out there. What we do know is this. The warship is human-made. We know it's not a threat, yet, but that could change. Our job is to get inside, learn what we can, and protect this planet from whatever the warship might be preparing for." One of the younger officers, Lieutenant Samuels, raised his hand. "General, if the warship was here before us, do we even have the technology to understand it, to make sense of its purpose?" Lucas met his gaze, his eyes steady. "We don't know, but we're going to find out. Together." The team filed into the shuttle that would take them toward the warship, their hearts pounding with a mixture of dread and determination. No one knew what the future held, but they all understood the importance of what they were about to do. The moment the shuttle passed through Earth's atmosphere and entered the vastness of space, the enormity of the situation became clear. The warship was enormous, dwarfing everything in its path. Its surface was a dark, metallic gray, and its outline glowed faintly with energy. It was a silent behemoth, its very presence an overwhelming force in the cold void. As they approached, the feeling of weightlessness in the shuttle seemed to amplify the silence, the stillness of space swallowing every sound. Everyone on board was aware of how little they truly knew about what lay ahead. For now, they could only wait and prepare for whatever the warship had in store. And deep inside the warship, its systems hummed softly, as if responding to the arrival of the humans. Whatever awaited them inside, it was clear that the time for questions was over. The warship was waiting, and humanity was about to step into the unknown, unsure of what they would find or what challenges they would face. But one thing was certain: the world would never be the same again. The massive warship loomed ahead, its vast, metallic surface reflecting the distant glow of nearby stars. The shuttle carrying General Lucas and his team cut through the darkness of space, inching closer to the colossal vessel that had appeared without warning. The crew was silent, each person lost in their own thoughts, eyes fixed on the warship. Their minds raced with questions, but none had the answers. Every passing second felt like a lifetime. "We're almost there," Lieutenant Samuel said, his voice breaking the stillness. His fingers gripped the controls as he made subtle adjustments to the shuttle's trajectory. "We'll be docking in 5 minutes." General Lucas nodded, though his jaw was clenched. There was no denying the weight of the moment. The fate of Earth might hinge on their next move. Everything they'd trained for, every mission, every battle, had led up to this point, yet no training could prepare them for what they were about to face. As they drew closer, the warship began to reveal more details. The surface, though dark, was covered with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with energy. It wasn't just a ship, it was something far more advanced, something far beyond what humanity had ever encountered. The closer they got, the more unsettling it became. "Prepare to dock," Samuels announced, his voice now steady but laced with tension. The shuttle gently shifted, aligning with the warship's docking bay. Everyone on board knew the stakes, and the reality of the situation was hitting harder than any of them expected. What would they find inside? An ancient technology, a weapon, or something even more unexpected? The shuttle's thrusters hummed softly as it locked into place with the warship's bay. The hatch slid open, and an eerie silence flooded the cabin. No sound came from the warship, no welcoming signal, just the cold, lifeless void of space, pressing in from all sides. Lucas stood first, his boots making a soft thud on the shuttle's metal floor as he moved toward the hatch. The rest of the team followed, each of them with a weapon at their side and determination in their eyes. As they stepped out into the docking bay, the sensation of stepping onto an alien vessel hit them all at once. The bay was vast, its walls smooth and metallic, with no visible windows or doors. The air felt heavy, almost as if it was infused with some unknown energy. "This place is huge," Dr. Mitchell murmured, her voice barely above a whisper as she scanned their surroundings. Her eyes were wide, taking in the enormous scale of the chamber. "It's like it was built for something, or someone, much larger than us." Lucas nodded, keeping his focus on the task at hand. "Stay alert," he ordered, his voice low but commanding. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." The team moved cautiously, their boots echoing in the silence as they advanced deeper into the warship. There were no signs of life, no creatures or humanoid figures, just the endless expanse of the ship's interior, stretching out like a labyrinth with no end in sight. The walls pulsed with a faint, rhythmic light, almost like a heartbeat, but there was no sign of any control panels or devices that could explain it. As they ventured further, the team came to an enormous chamber at the heart of the warship. In the center of the room stood a massive structure, towering over them. It looked like a throne, but its purpose was unclear. The material it was made of was unlike anything they'd seen before, a smooth, reflective surface that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. "Is this?" Samuel started, but he trailed off, unsure of what he was looking at. Before anyone could respond, a low hum reverberated through the room. The structure before them began to shift, its surface rippling as if reacting to their presence. Then, without warning, a holographic projection flickered to life. It was a figure, a tall humanoid being that appeared to be made of light. The figure's face was obscured, but its presence was undeniable. "I am the Keeper," the hologram's voice boomed, deep and resonant, echoing throughout the chamber. "You have come to witness what has been concealed for eons. But be warned, only those who are worthy will understand." The team froze. The voice was unlike anything they had heard before. It wasn't human. It wasn't even mechanical. It was something ancient, something powerful. "What do you mean?" General Lucas asked, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "What is this place?" A hologram's form flickered, then solidified once more. "This is the warship of the ancients. It was created for a singular purpose, to wage war against those who threaten the balance of the universe. And now, the time has come for its power to be awakened. A shiver ran down Lucas's spine as the meaning of the words settled in. The warship wasn't just an ancient vessel. It was a weapon. A weapon created by a race that had long since vanished. But their legacy, their purpose, had endured. And now, humanity was standing at the threshold of something they could neither control nor fully comprehend. "We're not just here to learn," Dr. Mitchell whispered, her eyes wide with realization. "We're here to fight, to be part of this war." The hologram's voice echoed once more. "The battle begins now. The enemy approaches. Prepare yourselves, or be consumed by the darkness." Suddenly, the walls of the chamber seemed to come alive, glowing with a blinding intensity. A sound like thunder rumbled in the distance, and the warship's interior shifted as though it was preparing for something immense. "We have no choice," General Lucas said, his voice firm despite the overwhelming circumstances. "We fight. We prepare for war." The team steeled themselves as the reality of the situation became clear. The warship was not a relic. It was a weapon that had been waiting for humanity to awaken it. And now, humanity's fate was tied to the warship's ancient purpose. There was no going back. As the warship began to power up, its systems humming with life, the team gathered their courage, readying themselves for whatever battle awaited them. The stakes were higher than ever, and the future of humanity rested on their shoulders. The countdown had begun, and there was no turning back. The warship's engines roared to life, the vibrations coursing through the floor beneath their feet. General Lucas and his team exchanged uneasy glances. The entire ship seemed to be waking from a long slumber, its immense power now at the forefront. The once silent chamber was now alive with energy, every wall and surface pulsating with a strange, otherworldly rhythm. "Brace yourselves," Lucas commanded, his voice calm but laced with urgency. "This isn't a drill. We're in this together, no matter what happens." The team nodded, their expressions a mix of fear and resolve. They had come here for answers, but they had found something far greater, a weapon of unimaginable power, and a mission they never expected. The warship was no longer just a discovery, it was now their responsibility. As they made their way through the ship's labyrinthine corridors, the air seemed to grow thicker, charged with a mysterious energy that hummed in their ears. It was as if the very ship was aware of their presence, reacting to them, almost anticipating their every move. There was no turning back. They had awakened something ancient, something that was now irrevocably tied to their fate. "We need to find the command center," Dr. Mitchell said, her voice steady but filled with concern. She was the scientist of the group, the one who had always believed in logic and reason. But even she couldn't ignore the growing sense of dread that hung in the air. Lucas nodded in agreement. "We need to understand what we're up against before it's too late." The warship's layout was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The walls curved in strange, organic shapes, the floors smooth but uneven, as though the ship was alive, breathing with them. The deeper they ventured, the more alien the ship became. The technology they had assumed would be contained within sleek panels and consoles was nowhere to be found. Instead, the ship seemed to be powered by something far more primitive, yet infinitely more advanced, a force that transcended human understanding. They arrived at the command center, or what they assumed to be the heart of the warship. It was a massive room, far larger than anything on Earth. The walls were covered in shifting, holographic displays that seemed to respond to their movements. At the center of the room stood a massive console, its surface made of the same reflective material as the throne-like structure they had seen earlier. It hummed with energy, its lights flickering like a heartbeat. "This is it," Lieutenant Samuel said, his voice tinged with awe as he approached the console. "This is where it all begins." Lucas stepped forward, his fingers brushing the surface of the console. Immediately, a wave of energy surged through the room, and the holographic projections flickered to life. A new figure appeared, this one far more imposing than the previous one. It was a being made of pure energy, its form shifting and rippling as if it were constantly in motion. The voice that came from it was like the rumble of thunder, deep and commanding. "You have come," the entity said, its tone both welcoming and foreboding. "The time has arrived. You are the chosen ones, the ones who will wield the power of the ancients. But be warned, the price of this power is great." The team stood in silence, processing the enormity of what they had just heard. Chosen ones. What did that mean? And what price would they have to pay? "What is the price?" General Lucas asked, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. The entity's form flickered, as though it were considering the question. "The warship's power is vast, but it requires a sacrifice. Only those who are willing to give everything can wield it. The battle you face will not be won by strength alone. It will be won through sacrifice, through unity." A heavy silence filled the room. The weight of the entity's words hung in the air like a storm cloud, threatening to break at any moment. The team looked at one another, each person wrestling with the implications of what they were being asked to do. The warship was their only hope, but the price for using it could be more than any of them were willing to pay. "What do you mean by unity?" Dr. Mitchell asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. "The power of the ancients was built on unity," the entity replied. "Only when you come together, truly together, will you be able to harness the ship's full potential. You are not just soldiers, scientists, or civilians. You are part of something greater. You must understand this if you are to survive the war that is coming." Lucas turned to his team, his mind racing. This wasn't just about defeating an enemy anymore. This was about something far deeper, something that would test their very souls. The warship was a weapon, but it was also a force of nature, an entity that required more than just physical strength to control. It required them to be something greater than they were. "We can't do this alone," Lucas said finally, his voice resolute. "We need each other. Every one of us is a part of this, whether we like it or not. And if we're going to survive, we need to trust in that unity." Dr. Mitchell nodded, her eyes filled with a new understanding. "We're not just a team. We're a collective. If we work together, we can unlock the full potential of the warship." The entity's form shimmered, as if acknowledging their decision. "Then you are ready," it said. "The enemy approaches. You have awakened the warship, but now you must defend it. The battle begins now. Prepare yourselves." The room trembled as the warship's engines powered up, its massive systems coming online. The countdown to battle had begun, and the team knew that everything they had ever known was about to change. There was no turning back. They were no longer just human. They were the last line of defense against an enemy they couldn't even comprehend. And with that realization, the warship's doors opened, revealing the vast expanse of space beyond. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. As the warship sailed into the vast emptiness of space, the crew felt the weight of their newfound mission. The stars outside the viewports twinkled serenely, but inside the ship, the air was thick with anticipation. They had only just begun to understand the depths of the warship's power, but already it was clear that they were about to face an enemy like no other. A war unlike anything humanity had ever fought. General Lucas stood in front of the massive holographic display in the command center, watching as enemy ships materialized on the far edge of the galaxy. They had been tracking the enemy for days, and now it was no longer a matter of avoidance. The enemy was here, and they were coming for the warship that humanity had just unlocked and had no idea how to fully control. "We're outnumbered," Lucas muttered, his brow furrowing as he analyzed the enemy fleet's position. "But we have the advantage. If we can use the warship's power wisely, we might stand a chance. We don't even know the full extent of its capabilities," Dr. Mitchell said, her voice tinged with both awe and fear. "What if we unleash something we can't control? What if the warship consumes us?" Her question hung in the air like a dark cloud, and for a moment, no one spoke. The warship had awakened, and it had responded to them. Now, It was their responsibility to guide it. But the cost of wielding its power was unknown, and the potential for destruction was unimaginable. "It won't consume us," Lucas said firmly, though even he wasn't entirely certain. "We have to trust in the unity the entity spoke of. We need to come together, use everything we've learned so far, and make this work." As the team continued to prepare for the battle ahead, a sudden alert blared throughout the ship. The enemy fleet had begun its assault. Lucas quickly ordered the crew to their stations, the tension in the air palpable as everyone moved with precision. The warship was about to test them in ways they had never imagined, and there was no time to waste. The warship's weapon systems came online, and for the first time, the team saw the power they were wielding. Massive energy cannons, capable of obliterating entire ships with a single shot, powered up, their glowing cores humming with immense power. It was a sight both beautiful and terrifying. "We can't fight like this," Lieutenant Samuel said, his voice anxious as he stared at the weaponry. "We're not ready to use this kind of power." "We don't have a choice," Lucas replied, his voice steady. "We fight or we die." Outside, the enemy fleet was closing in, and the warship's sensors began to pick up their movements. Hundreds of ships, sleek, black vessels, far more advanced than any technology Earth had ever developed, were closing in fast. Their weapons systems flared to life, and soon the ship was under fire. The warship's shields shimmered in response, absorbing the blasts, but the enemy was relentless, firing wave after wave of destructive energy. "Shields holding at 80%, Samuels reported, his fingers flying over the controls. "We won't last long if they keep this up." "Prepare to retaliate," Lucas ordered. "We need to show them what this warship can do." With a steady hand, Lucas activated the warship's main cannons. A surge of energy shot out from the ship's core, and the blast struck one of the enemy vessels. The impact was immediate and devastating. The enemy ship erupted into a cloud of debris, its massive frame disintegrating in an instant. The crew gasped in shock at the sheer force of the weapon. "It works," Dr. Mitchell whispered, her eyes wide. But before anyone could react, the enemy fleet adjusted its tactics, splitting into smaller groups and flanking the warship on all sides. The warship was powerful, but its size made it an easy target. The crew quickly realized that they couldn't rely solely on brute force. They needed to be strategic. Lucas gritted his teeth. "We can't fight them head-on. We need to outsmart them." He looked to Samuels. "Can we use the warship's cloak? Can we hide and reposition?" Samuels hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yes, we've been working on a cloaking mechanism. It's experimental, but it should work." "Activate it," Lucas ordered. "Let's use the element of surprise." Samuels activated the cloaking system, and for a moment, the warship seemed to vanish. It was as if the ship had become a ghost in the vastness of space, invisible to the enemy. The crew held their breath as the enemy ships passed right by them, unaware of their presence. It was a small victory, but one that gave them the advantage they needed. "Now," Lucas shouted, "prepare to strike." The warship reappeared from behind the enemy fleet, and the crew unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, targeting the weakest points in the enemy ships. The strikes were precise, tearing through the fleets with surgical precision. Another enemy ship was obliterated in seconds, and another followed soon after. The battle was fierce, but Lucas and his team were beginning to realize that they were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something much greater. The warship was their last hope, the key to humanity's future, and every decision they made in this battle would shape the outcome of the war. As the battle raged on, the warship continued to prove its power, but Lucas knew that the true test was yet to come. The enemy was relentless, and they were not going to give up easily. The warship had given them a fighting chance, but would it be enough to win the war? For now, the crew could only keep fighting, relying on each other and the warship's incredible power, knowing that the stakes were higher than any of them had ever imagined. The battle for humanity's future had begun, and the outcome was uncertain. But one thing was clear: they would not go down without a fight. The battle raged on, with flashes of energy lighting up the darkness of space. The warship's cannons blazed, cutting through the enemy fleet like a knife through paper. However, it wasn't enough to stop the relentless wave after wave of enemy ships. Lucas could feel the tension in the air. Despite their initial success, the enemy was adapting quickly. They weren't fighting blindly anymore. They had learned from their previous skirmishes. The warship's cloaking device, though useful, was beginning to lose its effectiveness. The enemy was adjusting, countering their every move. In the command center, the crew worked in unison, every movement coordinated as if they had been fighting together for years. But even with the warship's unimaginable power, it felt like they were barely holding on. With every passing minute, the battle grew fiercer. "We can't keep this up forever," Samuel said, his voice tight with strain as he monitored the ship's systems. "Our energy reserves are draining faster than we can regenerate them." "We need to finish this now," Lucas replied, his gaze fixed on the holographic display, showing the enemy ships closing in. "If we let them wear us down, we won't survive the final blow." Dr. Mitchell, who had been working frantically at a nearby console, turned to Lucas, her expression grim. "I've been studying the warship's core. There's a deeper layer of power, one that could turn the tide of this battle. But it's risky." Lucas didn't hesitate. "What do we need to do?" She swallowed hard before answering, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "We could unlock the warship's full potential. There's a dormant power deep within it, something it hasn't shown us yet. But it's dangerous. We don't know what might happen if we tap into it." Lucas looked around at his crew, each face showing a mix of resolve and fear. "We don't have a choice. We need to finish this fight." Without another word, Dr. Mitchell initiated the sequence to unlock the warship's hidden power. The ship seemed to hum with a deep, resonant energy, vibrating under their feet as the warship's core began to glow brighter, its energy expanding outward in all directions. The crew felt it, a sense of weightlessness, of power that surged through the ship like a living thing. But it was also terrifying. No one knew exactly what they were unleashing. Outside, the enemy ships were still closing in, confident in their numbers. They didn't know the true threat the warship posed. Not yet. "We're ready," Dr. Mitchell announced. Her hands hovered over the console, ready to trigger the ship's full power. "Do it," Lucas commanded. A pulse of energy erupted from the warship, an explosion of pure force that shook the very fabric of space. The enemy fleet, caught in the blast, was obliterated in an instant. Ships turned to dust, their forms shattered and disintegrated by the magnitude of the warship's power. The crew watched in awe and disbelief as the shockwave of energy continued to ripple outward, sending smaller enemy ships scattering in all directions. But the warship wasn't finished. The energy continued to build, becoming more intense with every passing second. The ship itself seemed to become an extension of humanity's will, unstoppable, unyielding, a force of nature. That's impossible," Samuels whispered, staring at the devastation in disbelief. Lucas could barely comprehend what was happening. The enemy fleet, which had been a formidable threat just moments before, now lay in ruins. The warship's power had been more than enough to turn the tide of battle, but the true cost of unleashing that kind of force was still unknown. As the energy levels started to stabilize, the crew could feel the weight of what they had done. We've won," Dr. Mitchell asked quietly, as if she couldn't quite believe it. Lucas didn't respond immediately. He stared out at the empty void of space, the remains of the enemy fleet drifting in the aftermath of the battle. There was a strange silence, a peace that felt wrong after everything they had just done. "We've won," he finally said, his voice hollow. "But what cost?" As the warship's systems slowly began to return to normal, the crew started to regain their composure. The tension in the command center began to ease, though the uncertainty of the situation remained. "We need to find out who was behind this," Lucas said, turning to face the crew. This wasn't just some random invasion. There's a bigger force at play here. We've only just begun to scratch the surface of what's happening. Dr. Mitchell nodded, her eyes wide with understanding. We've seen the power of this warship, but we haven't seen the full picture. If we're going to survive this war, we need to know everything about our enemies. Every secret, every hidden weapon they possess. Lucas looked out at the stars, the galaxy stretching before them. They had just defeated a threat unlike any other, but that victory felt like only the beginning. There were more battles to come, more enemies lurking in the shadows, and the warship was their only chance to survive. Prepare for what's coming, Lucas ordered. We may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. And with that, the crew set their course for the unknown, the warship a beacon of humanity's last hope. What lay ahead, they could not yet know, but they were ready. Together, they would face whatever challenges awaited them in the endless expanse of the universe. The war had just begun, and they would fight until the very end.